The wind howls through the Indus Valley, carrying with it the dust of 4,000 years. But if you listen closely, it doesn't sound like wind at all. It sounds like a scream, frozen in time.
Welcome to the scene of the crime. This isn't just an archaeological site. It is a cold case file that has remained open for millennia, defying every logical explanation provided by mainstream history.
We are standing in Mohenjo-Daro, the Mound of the Dead, a city that boasted plumbing, urban planning, and a society far ahead of its time, until the clock stopped at exactly one specific second.
Imagine a bustling metropolis, children playing in the streets, merchants trading grain, and then, in the blink of an eye, a blinding flash followed by absolute silence.
When archaeologists first brushed away the dirt in the 1920s, they didn't find soldiers who had died in battle. They didn't find bodies crushed by an earthquake or buried by a volcano like Pompeii. They found something that chills the blood of any forensic investigator. Entire families lying in the street, holding hands. There were no signs of struggle, no sword marks on the bones, no crushed skulls from falling debris. They were struck down instantly, mid-stride, by a force so sudden they didn't even have time to let go of each other. This is the instant death phenomenon. It creates a tableau of horror that looks less like an ancient tragedy and more like the aftermath of a neutron bomb. But the bodies are just the opening statement of this mystery. The ground itself holds a secret that physics tells us shouldn't exist in the Bronze Age. Scattered throughout the site, investigators found rocks, pottery, and bricks fused together, melted into a strange, greenish, glassy substance. This is called vitrification. To turn rock into glass, you need heat. Not just a campfire, not just a forest fire, and not even the heat of a kiln. You need temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius. That is the temperature of the surface of the sun, or the epicenter of a nuclear explosion. We see the same green glass in the Nevada desert at the Trinity test site. We see it at Hiroshima, and we see it here in a city that supposedly only had spears and arrows. If you're already asking questions that the textbooks can't answer, you're in the right place. This is Voices from History, and we investigate the shadows where the truth hides. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. We are peeling back the layers of a cover-up that spans thousands of years, and you won't want to miss the evidence we're about to reveal. Now, let's look at the most damning piece of evidence in this dossier: the radiation. When the initial excavations were conducted, rumors began to swirl in the scientific community, whispers that were quickly silenced. Reports surfaced that the skeletons found in the targeted zones of Mohenjo-Daro were among the most radioactive ever found, on par with those at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. One Soviet scholar, Alexander Gorbovsky, noted remains that contained radiation levels 50 times higher than the natural background radiation. Let that sink in. 50 times. Nature doesn't do that. A plague doesn't do that. Only one thing leaves that kind of fingerprint. So, if we have the bodies, the glass, and the radiation, we need to find the weapon. And for that, we don't look at the ground. We look at the texts. The Mahabharata is often dismissed as a book of myths, a fantasy story of gods and demons. But what if it's actually a history book, a war log? Listen to this passage describing a weapon used in the ancient wars. A single projectile charged with all the power of the universe.
It continues, an incandescent column of smoke and flame as bright as the 1,000 suns rose in all its splendor.
This isn't a metaphor for a storm. It describes the cloud formation, the blinding light, and the poisoning of the food and water that followed.
The explicit states that soldiers threw off their armor and jumped into the rivers to wash away the poison. A perfect description of decontamination protocols for radioactive fallout.
And then there are the Vimanas. The Sanskrit texts don't describe chariots pulled by horses. They describe flying machines with mercury vortex engines. They speak of crafts that could hover, fly vertically, and travel into the stars. Iron thunderbolts that were the messengers of death.
Is it possible that humanity isn't on a linear path of progress? That we are actually the survivors of a post-apocalyptic restart?
This brings us to 2026. We are no longer relying on dusty trowels and brushes. We are using artificial intelligence to reconstruct the crime scene.
Modern AI models, fed with the topographical data of Mohenjo-Daro, have run thousands of blast simulations.
The results are terrifyingly consistent. The pattern of destruction does not match a flood, it doesn't match an invasion, and it doesn't match a fire.
The AI reconstruction shows a distinct ground zero, an epicenter of extreme pressure and heat that radiated outward, vaporizing the center and vitrifying the perimeter.
The simulation predicts that for the pottery to melt the way it did, the blast had to occur roughly 1,500 feet above the city. An airburst.
Just like the little boy bomb, an airburst maximizes destruction on the ground. How did ancient architects know to fear the sky if they had never seen death rain from it?
Before we descend into the tunnels beneath the city, I want to ask you, do you believe our ancestors were more advanced than we are told?
Drop a comment below with Team Reset if you think civilization was destroyed and rebuilt. Let's see how many of us are awake to the truth.
Now, the mystery goes deeper, literally. Underneath the radioactive rubble, there is talk of a network.
This wasn't an isolated city. Reports indicate vast underground tunnel systems that may connect to the Himalayan secrets in Tibet.
Remember the legends of Shambhala, the Hidden Kingdom, or the Xibalba portals we discussed in our Maya investigation?
There is a theory that Mohenjo-Daro was part of a global grid, a pre-Ice Age civilization that was connected by these Vimana flight paths and underground hyperloops.
The Lords of the Dark Face versus the Lords of the Shining Face. A global war that spanned from the Andes to the Indus Valley.
If this network existed, Mohenjo-Daro wasn't just a city, it was a strategic military target, a capital that had to be erased.
But why is this ignored? Why does mainstream archaeology refuse to acknowledge the chemical and thermal evidence found at the site?
Because if they admit that a nuclear weapon went off 4,000 years ago, they have to rewrite the entire timeline of human history. They would have to admit that the theory of evolution from primitive hunter-gatherers to modern man is flawed, or at least missing a massive chapter. It is the forbidden archaeology. Artifacts disappear into the basements of museums. Papers on radiation levels are redacted or lost. When Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb, was asked if the Trinity test was the first nuclear explosion in history, he famously replied, "Yes, in modern times." Oppenheimer read Sanskrit. He knew the Mahabharata. He knew he wasn't inventing a new weapon. He was rediscovering an ancient curse.
The vitrified glass remains on the ground of Mohenjo-Daro, a green glowing testament to a civilization that flew too close to the sun.
They built towers, they mastered water, they perhaps even mastered the atom, and in a single second, they became shadows on the pavement. The skeletons hold hands, waiting for us to tell their story. They are the silent witnesses to the city that died in a second. But the radiation is fading. The evidence is being buried by sand and time. It is up to us to keep the file open.
If you believe that history is a cycle and not a straight line, then you need to see what we found in the Amazon next.
Click the video on your screen now to explore the lost technology of Xibalba. The investigation continues.
This is Voices from History, signing off.